But I'll tell you what, when I'm done, my biceps are humongous. Humongous. Like that, bang!
My name is Anthony Bevilacqua, and I'm the host of New York Muscle Radio podcast. My arms have been a weak point for years. When I started training, my arms measured 11 inches. Even after many years of hardcore training, nothing would get them to grow. With the help of my co-host, Big E, we set out on a mission to gain 1 solid inch to my arms in 12 weeks.
In the greatest experiment of all.
12 weeks later, this program finally helped me get 18-inch arms. The 12-week arm experiment, the ultimate arm growth program, ebook, the audio book, and the workout video. Pick up your copy now on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
New York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio, episode number 140. Are you confused on how to plan out your training? In today's episode, the boys, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, invited Mike Zourdos on to discuss programming. Learn how to properly plan out your workouts to give you optimal results. If you're a new listener, welcome to the best muscle building radio show ever. Big man, what's going on? How are you? I'm excited for today's episode. Mike Zourdos. Although I found out that he's a Cowboy fan, so he, lost a couple points in my book there.
Yeah, well, between the few guests that we have had on to speak about programming, I think we're kind of putting the icing on the cake now with Mike Zourdos, because I really don't think we've left anything out as far as everything you pretty much need to know on programming from top to bottom at this point. He's going to come on and talk DUP specifically, and I think, like I said, between every other guest we've had on to talk about programming and periodization, he's going to kind of put the finishing touches on it for you guys.
Yeah, we've definitely covered this in depth. So if you guys don't know how to plan out your own program by now, you need to hit us up then for coaching and just let us program for you, because we put out a lot on this, and we've actually learned a lot ourselves, having these guests on, and it's always cool to hear this stuff, but it's another thing to actually put it in play. So I think the interview we have scheduled today is going to be really, really good, because the questions that we asked him were right on point for what people need to learn. It's a little long, so you guys are going to have to digest this one a little bit, maybe listen to it 2 or 3 times, but really pay attention, because you're going to learn how to get everything done as far as your training goes.
Yeah, and it's a very important topic, I think, to fully understand, especially if you're an advanced athlete. In the beginning stages, periodization definitely plays a much less significant role, but as you get more advanced, you really need to know how to, handle it for long-term progress. So if you're in the beginning, intermediate stages, it might not be of as much interest to you, but once you're kind of past those newbie gains and trying to milk everything you can, this is something you definitely want to pay attention to.
Yeah, and not even if you're a powerlifter, forget powerlifting aside, just regular in general. I've said this so many other times on the podcast as well, but powerlifters have a step up against bodybuilders as far as training goes. So I think if we can all adapt this into our training, you're going to see a lot more results.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, I don't know. So I'm excited for this one. This is going to be fun. But what else is going on in your life, man? I feel like we haven't caught up. It's been a whole 4 days since I've seen you. That's a long time in our world.
It is, yeah. And I'm, just finishing this week of week 1 of the new training program that we're running right now, and we're gonna run it for 27 weeks exactly, I believe. And week 1 is done. I've been feeling pretty good. I've been feeling strong and motivated, so that's good. Because if you set that program up pretty intense the first week, it's very possible to not feel motivated, feel beat up already, and just hate training. We went 6 days in a row and felt good. I'm ready to hit week 2.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people think that they need to kill themselves in the gym. You included in that.
Yes.
This is the one thing that I forewarned you. Since it's the first week, it's going to be kind of our intro week, so it's going to be easing our way into things. And I forewarned you that it was going to be an easy week, because some people, and I'm going to point to you out, my co-host also thinks that, if you have a goal to hit 500 pounds in a deadlift, you have to be deadlifting 450 the whole time. And that's not really the case. You actually build up a lot of strength leading up to using those weights. And you have to kind of go through all the steps in order to get there. You can't just train heavy all the time. And, some of our clients too have been through this. Everybody thinks that, oh, I want to get stronger. I have to keep putting more weight on the bar and, keep the intensity really, really high. But the problem is you'll burn out and you'll get hurt that way. So it's always, you have to crawl before you can run.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the very true statement, because you will burn out a lot faster than you think when you're going at 100% intensity all the time. And that's where proper programming and periodization definitely helps out. And it's one of those things where you can feel good for a couple of weeks on it. You can say, oh, no, I'm fine training at 100% intensity, going all out as heavy as I can. 2-3 weeks, you feel good. Week 4, all of a sudden, you don't know why you're beat up. Week 5, you don't even want to go to the gym anymore. And, it happens to all of us. And if you don't pay attention to it, you'll keep repeating it over and over again. And that's why I said, I think this is the first time when I sat down and spoke to you, I said, we're going to put together a program. I'm going to let you handle it from top to bottom this time. Usually you might handle 80-90% of it, and I'll throw in some accessory movements and stuff like that. But I said, you know what? This is probably the first time in years I've let someone just handle my training completely, and that's what you're doing right now. So I'm pretty confident going into it that after the 27 weeks, my goals will be reached.
Yep. And they will. That they will, my friend. Man, I'm tired. I had a long weekend. I'm really hungry. Yeah, you ever have like a long weekend? We went to Hershey Park, and there's no food there, so it was like a shit day of eating. Like they had like crap. It was like nothing against Applebee's, but that was like kind of the food they had there.
Could be worse, but yeah.
I don't know. No, yeah, it definitely could be worse. But it's so funny, all the stuff that they have there. So everything is so high in fat. But I actually made my own Hershey bar, which was pretty cool. It was definitely worth the money to do. And
I saw that. I saw that on Snapchat. You were able to, what do you pick, like every ingredient you want to put in there, like the nuts, the type of chocolate, anything else you put in there?
Yeah, I forgot what I had in mind. I think I had chocolate chips, pretzel bites, and I don't even remember what the last ingredient was, but it was cool. You pick like what you wanted the inside to be, and they take you through the whole process of making it. So it was cool. It was definitely a cool experience.
Yeah, that is cool.
All right, let's move on to the trending topics. And I got some stuff lined up in here for you, big guy.
Oh yeah, let's hear
it. So the trending topics is a new topic. I like this, and it really encompasses anything fitness and just fun in general. It makes the podcast a little bit fun. So the first thing I have is the new celebrity apprentice. You know who that is?
No, who is it?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Really? I didn't hear that.
So yeah, he's gonna be the new celebrity apprentice. See, this is fitness news. So yeah, I have a clip here I'm gonna play. It's a 30-second clip from the commercial.
First, he was Mr. Universe. Then, he was the world's biggest movie star. He was governor of our biggest state and built a huge business empire.
My dream was always America.
Now,
I'm back.
this mega mogul is the boss of the new Celebrity Apprentice.
My job is to terminate you one by one. Hasta la vista, baby.
The new Celebrity Apprentice premieres Monday, January 2nd.
So I can't wait, man. My DVR is already set for that. I'm super excited to just watch Arnold. You know, it's so funny. A lot of people notice him for bodybuilding and all this stuff, but the guy was a millionaire before he was 30.
Yeah, you know what's funny about him? I mean, I shouldn't even say it's funny. It's crazy how he still always has his finger in something. You know what I mean? When celebrities in general, like a lot of times they'll pop up, then you won't hear from them for a while. Yeah, he's always into something. Whenever one thing ends, he's right on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I think the only reason why he's actually doing it is because Trump did it, and then Trump became president, and we know that. And I know. And I think you know this too. If Arnold Schwarzenegger was not an immigrant and he was born in America, he definitely would have ran for president by now.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have. Yeah, I'm sure he's still, like, with his mentality, he's still trying to find a way to make that happen.
It can't, man.
No, I know, but I'm sure he's, for whatever he's doing, he's probably wishing or hoping that he could find a way to change that.
Yeah, but I'm super excited to watch that show. So Monday, January 2nd. And again, NBC didn't pay us for this. No plug. It's just our love for the fitness industry, and it's nice to see a bodybuilder go beyond bodybuilding.
Yeah, that's very rare, to be honest with you. And I think that bodybuilding is a good platform for a lot of people to go into something bigger. But a bodybuilder's mentality is bodybuilding above all else. He was one of the few where I think even at his time, he was so into bodybuilding, but he knew that there was life beyond bodybuilding,
Nah, man, Skip McClure hated being a bodybuilder.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know many people in his position, though.
Yeah. All right, so second trending topic, and I found this article and I thought it was interesting. Pepsi admits its soda contains cancer-causing ingredients. So basically, I'll read this sentence. The company denied both the presence of this chemical in the beverage, and in fact, it was dangerous. 4-mel, which is short for 4-methyl-limazole, I don't know, is a compound formed in the manufacturing of the caramel coloring. It's also known as a carcinogen. So basically, that Pepsi failed to warn consumers that its drink contains a carcinogen. So basically, they're saying that that chemical that makes it caramel is a carcinogen.
So they said that Pepsi denied it, and now they're admitting it. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't read it. To be honest, I don't even really care because I don't drink soda anyway.
I don't drink soda either, but I would assume that's in diet soda as well.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
off my head.
I mean, the thing is, you don't know what the amount is. If the amount of it is worth it to even consider it being worth, something to worry about. But the thing with carcinogens is, if you take a normal food item, like if you take you take a steak and you burn it on the stove to the point where it's charcoal black, if you burn food, it's carcinogen. So you could make that on your own stove and be eating it and not even realize it. So it's one of those things where, it would have to be dose dependent to really be a concern for me.
I love eating carcinogens.
Yeah, it's funny. I love my sweet potatoes with nice burnt black spots on it, so the carcinogens give it a nice little flavor.
No, I'm saying from the commercial.
I know.
So I was going to tell our listeners about that. We should. You should have did a blooper for that. So we made a new commercial for Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code, which was a little creative on our part. But so Pete, when we were filming that, Pete was hysterical at the whole thing of me going, He was dying laughing so hard. The blooper would have been great to put in.
Oh, I still have the bloopers. I could probably throw them in there.
Oh, because we were cracking up laughing. But anyway, back to the article. It says here that and this is just a fun fact. Moreover, drinking just one soda each day adds up to a total of 39 pounds of sugar each year. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's a ridiculous amount of sugar in soda. I don't think a lot of people pay attention to that. And honestly, if you have a reason not to drink soda, I wouldn't even worry about the carcinogens or the chemicals in there or whatever. You're just drinking a shit ton of sugar that you don't need.
Yeah, you know what it is? A lot of people drink soda, though, man. Just because we don't drink it doesn't mean people listening to this don't fit it into their day. And I mean, I'd rather eat my food than fit it in liquid-wise. Unless I was trying to gain weight, then it makes it so easy to get calories in. But some people drink soda, man.
Yeah, I never see any reason to drink soda.
I know, so that means that no one else in the world drinks soda.
No,
Pepsi's a billion-dollar company. No one else drinks soda because Pete doesn't like it.
I didn't say I didn't like it, actually. I just don't see any reason to drink it. But I know what you're saying. But I don't know. You know what it is with one of those things? Because the company is so big, like you're saying, everybody drinks it. But how often do you go out? Like if you go out to dinner with a group of people, maybe they're not into fitness, maybe they're just average people. How many of them actually honestly order a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi?
Dude, a lot of people, man. All right, so I was out with my in-laws and my wife's family this weekend. Every single person ordered a soda at the table.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. And I guess more people drink it than I realize.
Yeah, dude, Pepsi's a billion-dollar company.
No, I know that. And if you go to the store, Pepsis are always flying off the shelf. They're always restocking it. It's not like they're sitting there and nobody's buying it. But yeah, I guess so. I mean, I would like to think. I'm curious
if diet soda sell, like what the ratio is.
Yeah.
Regular soda to diet soda. What sells?
I mean, I could definitely say that I do see plenty of people ordering diet sodas. Doesn't really make a difference. I mean, they're still drinking soda, but. I definitely think in the last few years there's definitely been a trend to shift towards diet soda over regular, but I guess people still drink the original.
Yeah, man, that's why it's a billion-dollar company. I don't know, but the reason why I brought this up too was because one, I think it was interesting that you never know what you're gonna get when you're getting anything. You never could be so sure as to this is good or bad for you. But I think the other thing to talk about too is the diet sodas, because a lot of people that's like a big fitness myth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Diet sodas make you fat, blah blah blah. What's your whole take on that?
I think that's a stupid statement. That's my take on it. And only I'm saying that because you're talking about something that's 0 calories, or maybe if you put it under a microscope you might find like 1 calorie per can or whatever it is. But it's pretty much 0 calories. And someone's going to take one little chemical or ingredient that's in there and say that this ingredient or chemical will increase how much fat you store in your body. You know, and the artificial sweeteners are bad for you and things like that. All that stuff, like I said earlier, is pretty much just going to come down to dose dependent. You know, one Tylenol will help relieve your headache. You take too many of them, it'll kill you. So that's like saying Tylenol kills. You know, same thing with saying like the artificial sweeteners kill. Okay, if you have one of them, it's going to fix your headache. If you have a whole bottle of Tylenol, yeah, you're probably going to kill yourself. So, and I think with diet soda, I mean, they've done studies on this recently, kind of to dispel that myth. And I think they said it was some type of crazy amount. Like you would need like to drink like 14 or 16 cans a day for any of those ingredients to actually be harmful to you. And that's like for extended periods of time. And nobody does that.
Dude, never say never, man.
It might even be
I'm
higher
sure,
than
listen,
that.
When I was when I was like really dieting for contest time, I was drinking a lot of diet soda.
Yeah, but how many could you drink? More than like 6 or 7 a day? 8
No,
maybe?
I mean, that's
you know,
true,
that's
but
a
still.
lot. You know, think
But
about if you
still,
had to
though.
drink like 2 12-packs a day. Like that's when
Yeah,
that's when you should probably worry about it, and you probably have something else going on if you if you're drinking that much soda and find it normal. So,
Well, you know you ever watch that show or heard of that show, the 600-Pound Life or whatever it is?
no.
It's a show on TV that, you know, they talk about people who are grossly overweight and they're
Yeah.
like 600 plus pounds. And one of them, they show like what they eat. Because I find that so interesting. You know, like for me, growing up and gaining weight was always such a hard thing. And when I really pushed myself and bulked up to like 217, I was eating like 6,000 calories a day. It was insane. It was disgusting. It wasn't like fun at all. Like a lot of people listening to this who have trouble, you know, whatever, low calories, they're like, oh, that sounds great. It's horrible. It's like being Thanksgiving dinner every day. It's disgusting. But anyway,
once you reach about 4,000 calories, it becomes work.
But anyway, I was always wondering how these people get, you know, push the envelope to get to be that heavy. So on one of the shows, I happened to catch at the right time what they were eating, and dude, it's disgusting. A whole pizza pie and a whole 2 liter of soda for like a snack. Dude, a snack.
Oh man. That's disgusting. But hey, listen, I'm not judging, so don't get offended, anybody listening.
Yeah, listen. If someone's 600 pounds listening to this, I really hope that they start implementing a lot of the stuff that we talk about, because then we could definitely fix their life. But still, though, that's crazy. Can you imagine a whole pizza pie and a 2 liter of soda for a snack, like in between lunch and dinner?
I mean, I love pizza, and I could put down a whole pie, but like I said, it would probably be a little.
Can't, man. No way.
Yeah,
I don't think you could.
I could if I was really hungry.
Can't.
I've regularly put down about six slices when I'm hungry. So if I could squeeze in another 2 more.
Nah, man, that's my limit. I'm done at 6. I can't go over 6. I've tried. I can't.
Yeah,
and I have a big appetite.
6 seems to be where it gets pretty tough.
Yeah, it does.
But even so, even 6 slices, if I were to have that, I'd probably be good for the whole day. You know, so a snack in between.
Snack in between.
Yeah,
and I was listening to, I forget, I don't know where I heard this one from. I don't remember what show it was. It wasn't the same show. It was something else. But it was someone who was grossly overweight, lost a ton of it. I don't remember the details of it. Lost got down to like sub 200, and then ended up ballooning it all back. And he said what happened was, how he ended up ballooning it all back was, he was at a barbecue one day, and they were serving hot dogs. So he started with one hot dog with the bun and whatever. He started with another hot dog, and one led into the next, into the next. He had 2 packs of hot dogs. Dude, that's fucking disgusting. With the bun.
Yeah.
Dude, how the hell do you, how many hot dogs are in a pack? 12?
Well, it depends how big the pack
8?
is. I think about 8 sounds right. Yeah.
Dude, even if I was hungry, 4 hot dogs, anything more than that, you just feel like gross.
Yeah.
Dude, 2 packs, 16 hot dogs with the bun. That's a lot of fucking calories.
Some people have the
spiraled-
gift of eating. I don't
know, man. He said it spiraled out of control from that point. But all right, guys, I guess that's the takeaway from this. Don't overeat your hot dogs.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, man. So should we let our listeners know?
I think we should give them a little insight. Yeah,
Give them a little insight. So, guys, we partnered up again. New York Muscle Radio is now going to have its own supplement line. We're super excited about this, and our supplement should be here soon. Should we drop what we're having it or no?
Let's give them a little teaser. I don't know if we should give out all the secrets yet.
So what do you think? What do you think we should tell them?
Well, we are. I want to talk about two things. The first thing we are going to do, and this is pretty relevant to the recent podcast that we have been talking about. with Anthony's blood work coming back lately, we've been trying to find ways to maximize his testosterone levels, and we're in the works right now of getting I guess you could say the best way to maximize your testosterone naturally without using any type of anabolics or anything like that. And we will have something for you guys, something special very soon. And we're gonna have a special, I guess you could say, treat to go along with it. I don't want to give out too much. I know that's pretty vague, but we will have something for you guys if you are trying to maximize your testosterone and want to go about it the best way. And this is not going to be any type of gimmick or anything like that.
This is going to be actually stuff that works, because we're going to, so we can kind of talk. We're going to use myself as a case study here, and actually Big Pete's going to hop along the ride here, and we got a special other third, not co-host, but third experiment here going on with this as well. And it's gonna be cool. We're gonna definitely. So for those of you who don't sit at the levels like Pete does, 700-800 normally, and you're for just a normal guy like I am, and your testosterone happens to be in the average range, and you want to bring it to the higher end, this is gonna be something for you, and we'll explain why later.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how that affects me compared to you, because you're definitely, based on your levels, you're gonna compare more to probably the majority of our listeners. Myself, I've actually done a little research on this lately, and I didn't realize it, but I'm in like the 95th percentile. I didn't realize it was that high. So for me, it should be really interesting to see what happens. But I think most of the people are going to be more concerned with how it affects yours. But
so what percentile am I in then?
You're like you're in the average, like dead in the average.
So what's the?
I didn't really look it up.
I think the average is 350 to 450.
350 to 450. Anything above 700, between 7 and 9, is like considered like the 95th percentile. I didn't realize it was that high.
See, I always knew you were a special guy, man.
I'm special in many ways.
So that's one product that we have dropping, which obviously if you can put the pieces there together. And one of our other supplements on the line is going to be a BCAA product. I think that's something that go into your spiel on that. I like the way you explain it the best.
This one I'm really excited about this one, and I'm excited to put it out for our listeners and everybody that follows the same nutrition protocols and just lifestyle ideas that we do, because with supplements, I mean, we've talked about this so much. We're not a big fan of a lot of supplements out there for a few reasons. Number one, a lot of them are unnecessary, and number two, a lot of them you really don't know what you're getting. And amino acid supplements are one that we've definitely spoken about in the past as far as being beneficial. We did that whole podcast on the intra-workout, maximizing your intra-workout nutrition, and BCAAs are one of those things you just really can't replace as far as maximizing your intra-workout nutrition. You could pretty much get everything you want through your diet for any other supplements that you might buy, but there's nothing you can eat really that's going to replace Branched Chain's intra-workout. So I'm excited to put that together, specifically because Branched Chains are one of those products where people hide behind the proprietary blend. You really don't know what's in it. They might just fill it with glutamine, and
Crystal Light.
Yeah, you really don't know what's in a lot of them. And that's happened with some of these big supplement companies. And we're not going to call anybody out on it because it's not even worth it. But I could tell you for a fact that I was taking a Branched Chain amino acid supplement for years that was backed by a couple pretty reputable people and people that I trusted. And, it turned out that there was something going on with that product that wasn't accurate. And I haven't taken it in a long time. And it's one of those things where you never really know what's in it. And, this is probably the first time I could say, okay, I'm going to have an amino acid supplement where I actually know what's in it, because there's nobody else telling me that there's something else in it. We're going to know exactly what we're putting together for you guys. So I'm happy to have that product, and I'm happy to, because we get people all the time that ask us about, should I take this supplement? What do you think about this amino acid supplement or this protein powder? And I say, well, the reviews are good. The people backing it, I trust them, but I don't know for sure. So I could tell you now, okay, I know for sure. And this is the first time I could say that with anything. So I'm glad to be able to say that. So if somebody wants an amino acid supplement and asks which one I recommend, I can say I only know for sure about ours. So I recommend that one.
Exactly. So I'm super excited about this. And guys, be on the lookout because we're definitely going to, as we announce this more and more as it gets closer to the date, because it's not like you just say, okay, I want an amino acid product, and boom, it shows up at your house. There's a lot that goes into it. So along the coming weeks, we're going to be dropping little things, and we're definitely going to have a pre-launch sale. So again, if you guys are ready to pick up stuff, you could pick it up on our pre-launch sale whenever that may be, and we'll let you know as the time goes.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if we announce this now and next week we had the amino acids, you could bet that would probably be some Crystal Light.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's take a short commercial break and let's get on with this podcast, because this is going to be a long one with Mike. We got a lot of questions to ask him, and we even got a cool case study that we did with him where he actually designs a training block for me, so you guys can see what a coach goes into with making your training. So let's take this short commercial break, and we'll be right back.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down that tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get to the show.
Nice, Pete.
What?
I saw you checking out that girl's butt.
What? I was just checking out her yoga pants.
Pete.
I was thinking you'd look really good in yoga pants.
Uh-huh.
I was like trying to check out what brand it was. Like I was looking at her form on deadlifts. They were all messed up.
Do you think she has a nicer butt than me?
Well, it definitely doesn't look like a pancake.
Did you just call my butt a pancake?
Well, I mean,
What can I do?
you gotta try New York Muscle Radio's Glutylicious program.
Glutylicious.
Yeah, you'll finally get a celebrity booty, like all the other girls following the program.
Fine, I'll do it. But don't get jealous when other guys check out my glutylicious ass.
Glutylicious, your guide to getting a celebrity booty in 12 weeks. Now available exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
Want anything special for your birthday?
Just a decent cup of coffee.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. Honey, your coffee's undrinkable.
It's pretty harsh.
Well, so's your coffee. You know, the girls down at the office make better coffee on their hot plates.
And he didn't even kiss me goodbye. You know, if I could just make a decent cup of coffee, I could relax.
So relax. Why don't you try Coffeine from BuyProteinCoffee.com? Tastes good as fresh perked.
Good as fresh perk.
And it has protein. 10 grams per scoop.
I'll surprise Harvey for his birthday tonight.
Hey, great coffee.
Doesn't it taste good as fresh perk?
Better.
Better than those girls make at the office?
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Coffeine, the world's only instant coffee that's fortified with muscle-building protein. Visit BuyProteinCoffee.com now.
Hey guys, it's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, and I just wanted to announce that my brand new personal training facility is now open. I'm currently taking on new clients in the Long Island, New York area. If you're interested in working with the best personal trainer in the business, head on over to abfitnesstrainer.com and sign up for your free consultation. Then you can understand why bodybuilding.com has named me Personal Trainer of the Month. All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode number 140, How to Write Your Own Training Program. Today we have on the best in the business, Mike Zourdos, to help us figure this whole training programming thing out. Mike has his PhD in exercise physiology and is the assistant professor at Florida Atlantic University. Mike is on the forefront of training optimally, and I'm super excited to have him on. Mike, welcome to the podcast, buddy. So I guess everyone will finally get their answer. What is the DUP?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I think it's pretty simple, actually. You go into the DUP.com and you plug in your 1-rep maxes and your SAT scores, and it gives you a program to use.
I wonder if anybody actually has that domain.
I'm not sure, but if one of us doesn't snap it up after this, I imagine somebody will.
Yeah, exactly. Mike, what's going on, man? So I met Mike when I went to Lane's camp, and Mike was one of the best presenters I've ever seen, and I really walked away from that camp knowing so much more about programming because of this guy. So I had to have him on the podcast. But this guy's like a movie star, man. It's like impossible to get in touch with you. So finally, 6-7 months later, we're finally rekindling here.
Oh man, I apologize for that. I know I've been hard to schedule with recently. It's been a lot going on, a lot of good things going on. In my personal life, just things to take care of. So my apologies, fellas, but I appreciate the persistence and sticking with me. I listen to your podcast a lot, so it really is an honor to be invited on.
Of course, man. So I see you have Eric Helms down there with you. What do you have him cleaning the lab?
Yeah, well, actually, he just went back to New Zealand. But, we have a quota here. We need to have somebody that's a senior citizen in the lab at all times. So we invited Eric down for that. No, we had Eric here. Eric's become a very close friend of mine over the past few years, and he's currently doing his PhD at the Sports Performance Research Institute at the Auckland University of Technology in New Zealand. And I'm actually one of Eric's, I believe I'm his tertiary supervisor on his dissertation committee. And we were planning to do a multi-site data collection for his dissertation, but it worked out better that he just came over here and kind of was a visiting scholar for a semester, and he collected the data for his dissertation along with my students in our lab here at FAU. So it was a great collaboration. He's become a good friend and a guy that I like to work with quite a bit.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. So Mike, let's tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you got into powerlifting and like the art of programming.
Sure. So as Anthony said, I am a assistant professor here at Florida Atlantic University. We're in Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm the director of the muscle physiology laboratory here. How I got into this is, I was always interested in athletics and sports, and I played soccer at a small Division III college. And then I got into being a strength and conditioning coach at Salisbury University in Maryland when I was a master's student, and I loved doing that and had a great mentor there, but I just didn't feel like I knew enough hard science. So I went on to earn a PhD in exercise physiology from Florida State University with some other wonderful mentors. And I had a mentor that really let me kind of explore my own path within skeletal muscle physiology. And for me, that was programming. And through that, I got involved in a lot of different aspects of not only research, but in powerlifting, in Florida powerlifting. I got involved with some athletes there and conducted some research on those lifters, and that really helped pave the way for the research I was able to conduct then and continued to conduct now. Started competing in powerlifting when I was a graduate student at Florida State around 2010. I haven't competed in a few years as I've been focusing on family and academics and research and so forth, but hopefully step back on the platform soon. But that was my path, and just came to FAU and was very fortunate to have a department chair that found a laboratory space for me. And we've been able to make it our own little kind of powerlifting, skeletal muscle physiology research paradise, if you will. And we're very proud of what we've accomplished, and we have a pretty good atmosphere here. So that was my path. I think probably a little unconventional for most academics, being into sports and strength conditioning first. But there's many different ways to get there, and that's how I got here.
Yeah, so and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have you actually have a world record or some type of record in the curl, right?
Well, it's actually not the curl; it's a curl lockouts. So what I do is I set the pins on the squat rack up to just for 2 inches of the curl, and then you really want to overload that last part. Sometimes I do reverse band lockout curls, and
Pete's taking notes. Pete's taking notes.
I have my pen and paper right here.
Yeah, everybody should be taking notes. This is the most important part of the podcast. No, so I don't think I would hold any world record in the curl there, but hopefully nobody runs out and does reverse band curls. However, if you do, I would love to see a video.
You have some type of record with squats, though, isn't it?
No, I don't have any record. Squat is probably my best lift. I competed at the Arnold. I qualified for that in 2000. I qualified at USAPL Round Nationals, and later that year I squatted at a body weight of 76 kilos, which is about 167 pounds or so. I squatted 230, which is 507. So that's nothing amazing compared to a lot of the lifts that are out there these days, but it's also not completely terrible. So no records there, but I think I'm probably an average lifter, if you will, by these days standards, and hopefully can improve upon that.
You're the man. Mike's the man. I mean, I had such a good time with you. This guy took so much time out of his day when we were at camp. We sat in the car and hung out and talked programming, because I just find programming so interesting. So that's why I was like, I have to get him on, because I know there's so many people out there who try to devise training programs for themselves and get nowhere and get frustrated. So, Pete, start us off here.
All right, so I think really to start this off, if we're going to talk about periodization, there's so many different types of periodization. We hear about linear periodization, nonlinear, block periodization, and Mike's specialty is obviously daily undulating periodization. So Mike, can you kind of give the listeners like a basic definition of each of these forms of periodization and why it's useful in programming?
Certainly. So I want to mention 2 words here, and I wrote these on the board at Lane's camp, Anthony, when you were there, so you may remember them. But the 2 words I want to say off the bat, which is what I write for all of my students when I lecture on this in class, are the words conceptual and integration. So everything that we define here in the next few minutes, I want everybody to realize that there's a conceptual understanding in that there's no magical program, right? So we made the joke at the outset of this podcast that you could log on to the internet and you could plug your numbers in and it would spit out a magic program. That's not the case. Once we start to understand things conceptual, we understand that 10 different people could write a program that's all based on the concepts, and they could all be correct. I also want to mention the word integration. So I'm going to define the terms that Pete asked, block periodization, linear periodization, daily undulating periodization. But at the end, I'm going to tie all of those things in together and really note how they can be integrated together. And that's what we're going to call our integrated macro cycle or model of periodization. So to start with Pete's question, let's start at the most basic. The most basic is a linear periodization model. So a linear periodization model is just as the title sounds, in that the changes are very linear. So over a linear periodization model, volume will gradually decrease and intensity will gradually increase. So let's just say you have 16 weeks until competition. We could break that down into 4-week blocks. A 4-week block is about what we'd call a mesocycle. So in a linear periodization model, volume would change essentially every mesocycle. So you'd run 4 weeks of high volume. Let's say in that 4 weeks, you're doing 12 to 15 reps. So the intensity would be very low, maybe 55 to 60%. Then the next 4 weeks, you'd be doing, let's say, 8 to 12 reps. So the intensity would then increase from 60 to 70%. And that's the first 8 weeks. Now the next 8 weeks, we're going to focus more on intensity than we did on volume. So we might decrease our repetitions in the next mesocycle, the third mesocycle, to maybe 4 to 6 reps, increase our intensity to around 80% or so. And then after that, really decrease to around 2 to 4 reps, let's say, maybe even single repetitions, and increase intensity to maybe 85, 90, 95%. So that's a linear model where there's a gradual decrease in volume and a gradual increase in intensity. Now, if we go to daily undulating periodization, what we're going to see here is there are much more frequent variations in volume and intensity. More specifically, they're daily variations. So let's just say the average training frequency on a muscle group for most people is 2 to 3 times per week. Well, if we think back to the linear model, we were doing all 12s and 15s for one training block. Well, in a daily undulating model, you might be doing 12s on Monday, you might be doing 8 repetitions on Wednesday, and then you might be doing 2 or 3 repetitions on Friday. And obviously during that week, when you're doing 12 repetitions, your intensity would be low, 60%. When you move on to do 8 repetitions, your intensity would increase to 70%. And then when you decrease the repetitions even further to, let's say, 2, you'd increase the intensity to 85, 90%. So within that week, you'd have the volume decreasing and the intensity increasing. And then when you start the next week, the volume would be high again and the intensity would be low. So that's a daily undulating model. But I want to elaborate on that just a little bit further. And I would like to really define for you guys, and please tell me if I need to clarify further, between the terms, and we're going to get to block periodization in just a moment. I would like to define for you between the terms daily undulating periodization and daily undulating programming. So periodization represents long-term changes. Programming represents what I like to call short-term, or how you program sets and repetitions within a week. So let's go back to our first mesocycle, if you will. What I want to illustrate now is that when you use a daily undulating programming model, volume over a course of that 16 weeks before competition still goes down and intensity still goes up, just like we illustrated in the linear periodization model. So if we take our first 4 weeks, which is our first mesocycle, let's say we train on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Well, if we're all the way in the first 4 weeks and our competition isn't for 16 more weeks, we want to be doing higher volume, but we can still achieve that in a daily undulating programming strategy. So let's take Monday in week 1 and let's do 10 reps. Let's take Wednesday in week 1 and let's do 8 reps. And then let's take Friday in week 1 and let's do 6 reps. We do that for 4 weeks. Now, the next 4 weeks is mesocycle 2. Remember, I call that an undulation pattern, 10, 8, 6. So let's go to the second 4 weeks. Now we might do 9, 7, 5. Let's go to the next 4 weeks. Now we might do 8, 6, and 4. And then let's go to the next 4 weeks. Now we might do something like 6, 4, and 2. So that's what I call programming within each week, is the amount of reps you're doing each day. But as you can see in that daily undulating programming model, it still held a very linear strategy, and that volume went down over the course of the 16 weeks. And obviously intensity, even though we didn't mention specific percentages of 1RM, would increase gradually over that time as well. The main difference is that you're allowing yourself to change repetitions within a week, as opposed to in a linear model where you're not. And the advantage of that is you can reach a peak more quickly and more efficiently. Because if I'm only doing 10s in one mesocycle, and then I want to go down to 5s in the next mesocycle, well, I'm dropping 5 reps, which means I might be increasing my percentage by 10%. That's a lot. But if I'm doing 10, 8, 6 in one block, and the next block I go to 8, 6, 4, well, in the first block, I might be doing 6s at 75%. In the second block, I might be doing 4s at 80%. That's only a 5% change. So it's not as much of a shock to the neuromuscular system, if you will, to make that change. So a daily undulating programming or periodization strategy actually still fits in to the overarching linear concept. So that's what I mean when I say the word integrated. That was, as we said at the outset. The last thing to define is block periodization. So let's take that same 16 weeks. Now, let's divide that in half, and we have the first 8 weeks and the second 8 weeks. We can call the first 8 weeks our preparatory block. And remember, in our preparatory block, we had an undulation pattern in the first 4 weeks of 10, 8, 6, which means the intensity is going to be lower, maybe 65, 70, 75. And then in the second 4 weeks, we might have an undulation pattern of 8, 6, 4. So the intensity is still, we're still doing 8, still doing some hypertrophy type of stuff. That's the preparatory phase. That's the volume phase. Then after that, in the next second 8 weeks, we have 2 more blocks of 4. Maybe we take our undulation pattern down to 6, 4, 2 in that third block. We call this our peaking phase, and these would be an intensity block. And then in our last 4 weeks, we would go down to an undulation pattern of maybe 5, 3, and 1. And that would be our last intensity block. So what I tried to do there in those 3 definitions, and I know I'm going on a bit, but I truly hope this is making sense, is that I've tried to take all of those definitions, describe them, but then bring them full circle and integrate them in together in that 16-week training cycle, if you will, leading up to a competition. So you can see that volume will always go down and intensity will always go up. So we've integrated all of these strategies, but what we've done is we've allowed ourselves to program undulating repetitions within a week, so we can make more logical decreases in volume and increases in intensity than a pure linear would do. But we've also kept them into volume blocks, which is in our preparatory phase, thus block periodization, and intensity blocks in our peaking phase, also constituting block periodization in the second half of that training cycle. But we've allowed the daily undulating programming strategy to change repetitions within a week. So I hope that makes sense to everybody out there. And that's something I've tried to get across quite a bit over the past year or so, which is to really understand the integration of these concepts.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people just think that DUP, or daily undulating periodization, is a program in itself. But in reality, it's just the only thing that really makes it so special is that the training, like you said, the reps vary during the week and during each block. And the simple fact of when you use a linear program, which, like you said, the reps just keep going down. So it's like you never kind of lose any adaptations by doing that. So the way I usually just tell people is DUP is just basically alternating your reps throughout a training block.
Yeah, very simply, you can simply state that, which is you have a week and you change your repetitions within that week, and now you have some sort of undulating programming or undulating periodization. You know, Anthony, when we were at Lane's camp, one of the things I enjoyed, and you mentioned it earlier, is instead of riding in the van to the training session, we got to drive in the car a little bit. And I remember we were chatting after I gave my talk, and one of the things that we both said to each other is, we said, it's really not that hard. It's really not that complicated, you said. And I said, no, it's not at all. And we laughed and we chatted about that for a minute, which is it's pretty straightforward. If you're altering your repetitions within a week, you're gradually having progressive overload and increasing your volume over time. That's the goal. The only other thing I would add into the integrated model is if we utilize some sort of RPE or autoregulation. RPE is rating of perceived exertion. And a lot of you guys might know, I know you had Helms on before, and he explained it quite a bit, as well as Ben Escrow, and he explained it a little bit.
We had Mike Zourdos on also. Oh,
fantastic. That one I missed. And Mike is the godfather of RP and resistance training. He's the one that started all this back in 07, 08. So if we think back to the integrated macro cycle, when you're in the volume blocks, meaning in the preparatory phase, you're accumulating more volume. So the RPE per set should be lower. If your RPE is higher, let's say a 9 or 10, if you're going to do 5 sets of 8 at 100 kilos on whatever exercise, and you have an RPE of 10, well, you're going to have to decrease the load for the subsequent set. That's going to compromise volume. But if you're utilizing an RPE of, let's say, 6 or 7, then you can repeat that load. So volume is predicated on doing that. So that's the last piece of the integrated macro cycle. The earlier in the macro cycle, the higher the volume, the lower the RPE. Later on in the macro cycle, the lower the volume, the higher in the intensity, the higher the RPE.
The other thing that people mainly associate DUP with is training frequency of lifts. So majority of the time when I see a DUP program online, or if someone talks to me about, I'm doing DUP, majority of the time everyone's doing the lifts 3 times a week. But I don't even think they realize that that's not necessarily DUP. That doesn't make it DUP just because your frequency is high. Can we talk a little bit about frequency of lifts and how you could do DUP not training lifts 3 times a week?
Absolutely. It's another excellent point to bring up, because it allows us to get away from the paradigm of thinking that this is some sort of fixed program. And I think there has been a kind of reputation attached to when somebody, says the term DUP that, we're going to squat, bench press, and deadlift 3 times a week. And that's not necessarily the case. Any sort of programming or periodization should be able to fit not only your training age, but your availability to train. And this does exactly that. So essentially, it's just saying from one time you train to the next, you're altering your repetition or the repetitions that you're doing. So let's say you can only train on Mondays and Fridays. Well, on Mondays, if you're doing 10 reps on something, and then on Fridays you're doing 5 reps on something, that's undulating your repetitions. That's DUP, if you will. So it does it twice a week. So it fits any frequency that you want. If somebody wanted to train 4 times a week, they could increase greater than 3 times a week and do 4 times a week, and let's say do 10, 8, 6, 4 within a week, and now they'd have DUP training 4 times a week. So the frequency, I would say recent meta-analysis suggests that 2 to 3 times a week on a muscle group is probably the way that you want to go. But I would say, the less trained you are, you're not going to need as much volume or frequency to make progress. So you can do that on 2 times a week, but in no way is undulating periodization or undulating programming predicated on a frequency of 3 times a week, nor, and you mentioned this as well, Anthony, nor is it predicated on doing the same lift each time. So if your focus is muscle growth and not powerlifting, and just purely bodybuilding, or you're just training because you enjoy it and you're not competing in anything, and let's say you want to train lower body on Mondays and Thursdays, if you will, and on Mondays you like to prioritize back squats and leg press, and then on Thursdays you prioritize front squats and single joint movements. Well, let's say on Mondays you do reps of 12 on back squats, and then on Thursdays you do reps of 6 on front squats. That's still DUP. You're still altering the repetition scheme throughout the week from higher to lower. So everything you pointed out is exactly right. There's nothing fixed about this, and that's why at the outset I mentioned the word conceptual. We talked about integration for a while, but this is understanding it conceptually. It fits whatever your goals are and whatever type of frequency you would like, or whatever type of frequency you like on a muscle group or a lift, it will fit that. It's not predicated on 3 times a week frequency. It's not predicated on even if you just train twice a week on a muscle group, even doing the same lifts both times if you don't want to.
So going with that, more for people that maybe just want to build a little bit of muscle or just get stronger overall, and maybe not necessarily have a competition in mind. The blocks are set up, obviously you want to peak for the competition and be the strongest at the end, which is why the intensity block is so important. But for those people that maybe don't have a competition coming up and they want to utilize this, how would you go about setting up the entire training cycle? Would that be necessary to do it in phases of hypertrophy and then increasing the intensity towards the end of the training cycle?
Sure. I think to an extent you would, but you're never going to want to get too far away from hypertrophy type training, if you will, because that's your main goal. So if we just think on a basic scale of, let's say, using this concept for bodybuilding and powerlifting, the main thing that's going to change is that for powerlifting, you're going to spend more time, let's say, doing intensity blocks than you would for bodybuilding. In bodybuilding, you might have a ratio of, let's say, 4 volume blocks to 1 intensity block, or 5 volume blocks to 1 intensity block. But even in that intensity block, let's say in a powerlifting intensity block, you have a frequency of 3 times a week. And on the squat, on Monday, you're doing 5 reps. Wednesday, you're doing 3 reps. And Friday, you're doing 1 rep. Well, in bodybuilding, your intensity block might be 7 reps, 5 reps, and 3 reps. So it's never really needs to get quite as low as it does for powerlifters, because that's not your main goal. And if you're doing that, you're getting too far away from doing a lot of volume. However, it is important to do some lower repetitions because you're going to be able to get stronger. And if you're going to be able to get stronger, that's going to allow you to lift a heavier load. Thus, it's going to allow you to do more volume when you're going back to your higher rep training phases. But I would still have blocks, if you will, but I would just start with higher repetitions with hypertrophy, and I wouldn't build down quite as far for bodybuilders. Now, again, higher repetitions aren't inherently better for mechanistic reasons for hypertrophy than lower repetitions. However, practically they are, because it's going to take a lot shorter time to achieve volume through sets of 12 and 15 than it is through sets of 3. So it's just not going to be practical for a bodybuilder to be doing sets of 3 all the time. But I do like to, let's say, work on 3 or 4 volume blocks and then maybe 1 short 3-week intensity block to peak strength for a bodybuilder. And then we're going to go back to the volume for the most part. And then as somebody gets closer into a show, one tool that I like to use a lot is RP and autoregulation, because strength will fluctuate so much. So if you're using a 1RM that you established a while ago, or an estimated 1RM, it's just simply not going to be your 1RM as you're getting closer to the show. So I will oftentimes then do 2 things in that even though we're not doing very low repetitions at that point, I will do 2 things. One is to use RP to allow bodybuilders to adjust that load to manage their strength levels as they're getting closer to the show. But additionally, before we do our volume work, I might once a week allow that bodybuilder to work up auto-regulating to a single repetition on a squat or a bench at a 9 RPE. Just to help maintain strength as much as we can. So then when they do their volume work at that point, they are maintaining strength as much as possible. They can overload more and achieve more volume. And if you can't, strength is a decent measure of if you're going to be able to, maintain as much muscle as possible as you go into the show. So I do like to use those strategies.
Yeah, and even for the average person listening to this who's just interested in just getting bigger or stronger, whatever the case may be. So when we talk about volume blocks, we're talking about having periods of time where we're training between 70 and 80% range, I would say, and you're using higher repetitions, more standard, quote unquote, bodybuilding split, numbers, 8 to 12 reps in that range, even 6 reps, and then when we switch over to an intensity block, we're bringing the intensity up, so we're lifting closer to our 1 rep max, and we're lifting more than the powerlifter numbers, the 5s, the 3s, stuff like that. So we're alternating those blocks throughout training, which is something that a lot of people don't do. When the average person going to the gym, I want to get big, and they just focus on lifting whatever. So if you implement, maybe 4 weeks of quote unquote like a volume training, you're going to get bigger during that time, and then alternating that with an intensity, you're going to get stronger. And you have to get stronger in order to get bigger. And I think a lot of people lose sight on that. Well, I don't care about getting strength. I want to just get bigger. And my co-host here is guilty of that because, when I first met him, I'm like, have you ever benched 3 plates? And we were benching one of the first times. And he's like, no. Like, what do you mean no? I'm like, that's like a huge milestone for everybody. You never wanted to bench 3 plates. And he's like, no. He never really cared. But I think if he would have focused early on more in his training for getting stronger, I think he would have the potential to get bigger.
Yeah, I think in general, that's not only a good rule, but I think powerlifters and bodybuilders could learn a lot from each other in their training strategies. And some powerlifters could probably benefit from a little bit more volume, although some might also do too much. So there's a fine line there. And then bodybuilders, although it's been a very, very nice trend in the community to see more bodybuilders focusing on the main lifts and lifting a little bit heavier over the past few years while still keeping their main focus on bodybuilding, but incorporating that in there a little bit. And, I've been able to gauge that. When I first went to Lane Norton's camp in 2012, and I gave a talk on this concept we're talking about here today, and I mentioned, squatting 2 to 3 times a week or training a muscle group 3 times a week and doing some lower repetitions and volume blocks and intensity blocks. The response was very positive, but was almost like, what the hell are you talking about, man? And now to go back this year to a camp like that and to have experts there teaching the squat, bench press, and deadlift, and to be able to talk about these things and they be pretty commonplace now is pretty cool. It's great to see the evolution.
Yeah. What's like the average length of a training block then? So we're throwing around four weeks. Doesn't necessarily have to be 4 weeks. And so if someone listening to this, they're saying, okay, so I just did 4, whatever the average length is going to be. You just finished out a block. Do you just jump right into an intensity block? Do you just switch right over? So how does someone go about doing that?
So I lost you there for a second, Anthony, but I think I got the gauge of the question. So please correct me if I'm missing anything that you asked. So no, certainly a training cycle doesn't have to be only 4 weeks, even though we mentioned that as an example. And I think this is a good thing we're doing here today, which is we're dispelling a lot of myths of, DUP has to be this fixed thing that we do 3 times a week, where a training block has to be 4 weeks. It certainly doesn't. So a training block can really last any number of weeks that it needs to. So if let's say somebody is in their a bodybuilder's in their off season and they have no real timeline where they have to start dieting here or they have to be prepared for the show at this time and they're really just putting in a lot of volume, well, that's a time where a training block can be indeterminate. So what I'll typically do is maybe write 3 to 4 weeks at a time, because I don't really like to write longer than that because things might change in that time frame. So let's say we're in a volume block, and in that volume block, remember, we're doing higher repetitions, training 2 to 3 times a week, maybe an undulation pattern, training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, of 12 reps on Monday, 10 reps on Wednesday, and 8 repetitions on Friday. So that means the RPEs are going to be lower. I'm going to aim for RPEs if I'm in that training phase with those high repetitions between 5 and 7. So that means I'm leaving 3 to 5 repetitions in the tank on every single set. Now, I know to some people that's blasphemy to stop that far short of failure, but remember, the goal is to accumulate volume, not to simply fatigue yourself on every single set. And that's something I think that's very important that we get back to, is how to disseminate volume throughout a week. So if we have this concept and we're going through those 4 weeks and we're adding 5 or 10 pounds to the bar each week, or a little bit to the dumbbells each week. And in the first week, our RPEs were on average of 5 or 6, and they're still around 6 or 7 in the fourth week of that training block. Then what I'll probably do is keep going. Because if my progress is going well, my RPEs are still low, and I can still add more weight to the bar before tapering or deloading, then I don't really see a need to do that unless you have some sort of injury. Obviously, if you want to stay healthy, you have something else in your life that you need to go ahead and adjust that for. But the point is, you can auto-regulate the length of a block. By contrast, if you write a block for 5 or 6 weeks and you notice in week 3 that you're just not making the adaptations that you need to, well, maybe you're overreached a little bit too early. Maybe you're just not performing well for whatever reason. So go ahead and taper a week early, and then you can jump back on it. So I might run blocks sometimes as long as 10 or 12 weeks. If everything is going well, we're progressing, I'll monitor training RPEs each week. If they're being, as we're increasing load, if they're staying the same, I see no reason not to do that. And, we've talked about keeping repetitions. Let's say that undulation pattern on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, have 12, 10, 8, the same for a training block. But we don't have to necessarily change those repetitions, or we don't necessarily have to only change those repetitions from one block to the next. So if we do that for 4 weeks, we can go another 4 weeks without tapering or deloading, and then take those repetitions down to, let's say, 10, 8, 6. And if you do that, that will allow you to extend the training block a little bit farther. If you decrease the repetitions per day, then you can add more weight to the bar and keep RPs the same as you continue. So I just monitor progress and use that weekly feedback from a client I might have or on myself to decide if I need to taper or if I want to continue on the block. Now, if you have a competition coming up, you have more of a fixed time frame. But don't think of a training block up, this has to be 4 weeks, this has to be 5 weeks. No way. You can use that feedback, extend it as long as you can, or as long as is kind of necessary until you feel that you need a taper to go ahead and do that, and then jump back on a new block afterwards. The only other thing I want to add here is that when you do taper and you start a new block, I always think, and I know, Anthony, we did this, and I know that you do this, it's always necessary to run an introductory week. If you're going to jump into a volume block, the last thing you want to do, and I'm sure we've all done this, we write out our training block and we calculate, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to add 5 pounds to the bar here, 10 pounds to the bar here. And at the end of this month, I'm going to be squatting 750 pounds. Well, it never works out like that. Yeah, right, for reps. And, it never works out like that. And, you get through halfway through the first week of that block and you're like, oh man, this is never going to work. Well, just run an introductory week. So in an introductory week, I'll usually, let's say on week 1 of a training block, I'm going to do 3 sets of 8 at 70% on Monday, 4 sets of 6 at 75% on Wednesday, and 5 sets of 4 at 80% on Friday. Well, what I'll do in the introductory week is maybe take 5 to 10% off each of those days and a set off each of those days and run that introductory week. It's going to be very easy on the main lifts, but if you want to get a little more work in and make sure you still feel like you're getting something out of it, you can do a little bit more on the assistance that week if you see fit. But I promise you, if you do that on the introductory week, you're going to be so much more prepared for the volume block. The purpose of that is to allow yourself to incur what we call the repeated bout effect. When you repeat a bout of exercise, you get an effect of less muscle damage and less soreness. So if you go into the gym on week 1 and you're way too sore from all the volume, you should have done an introductory cycle. So after you extend that training block as much as you need to and you taper, before you go into the next block, think what you're going to do in week 1, take 5 to 10% off of that and run an introductory cycle. I promise you it will help and it will work. It's the easiest thing to do is to go into the gym and kill it. The easiest thing is to go in the gym, turn up the music as loud as you can. I'm doing that right now. Metallica just came out with a new album, so I'm pretty jacked up about it. And turn that up as loud as you can and kill it. The hardest thing to do is to be disciplined and run that intro cycle, but I do think it's a necessary thing to do.
So, okay, live case study here. So now after the camp, I got that whole, intro week, whatever. So I was like, so now I'm in my training block. I was in a volume block of my training. So as we discussed, I was doing a little more high repetitions. It was specifically 864, what I was using leading up into my last meet. And I was really crushing that block. I was able to add 10 pounds a week to all my lifts. I was squatting the most I've ever squatted for reps. I was hitting almost PRs every week in volume. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But now it came time, again, that 4 week ended, and it came time, but I had a contest. So it was like I had to transition into the intensity part of it. So it came time to switch, and I'm like, everything's running so good. I don't need an intro week. I don't need it. I didn't listen to you. I didn't need it. Boom, that first week, everything, I felt like I got hit by a tank. It felt like I just stalled out all my progress. I actually had to scale back my training a little bit to kind of catch up. So that intro week can definitely come in handy. And from a live case study there on myself, you are 100% right with that, because I'm convinced if I would have did an intro week, a little lower volume, and eased my way into it, I still would have been able to tack on as much weight. I probably would have did a lot better at my meet not having that, because I felt like those last 4 weeks in that intensity phase for me was playing catch up because of that first week.
I think that's a really cool story for a few reasons. One, it's not only important that we do the intro cycle, but if you're transitioning from volume to intensity is a different focus. So now you need to do an intro that's specific to that to prepare for that. You're adapted to volume, but you're not necessarily adapted to the intensity yet. So you need to prepare for that. But I think this story is really cool because, and we've all done this. I've done exactly what you're describing. And look, I spend a lot of time doing stuff in my own training that I tell other people not to do. And I'm not trying to do that. I just get to the end of a week and I realize, man, I know what I should be doing, but I didn't do it. I need to be more disciplined. But I think it's a cool story, man, because you're aware of this, and we've talked a lot about training before, and I know that you should have done that. But sometimes the best way to learn is by making that mistake, and we've all made that mistake. And I guarantee you'll never do it again now. So you never want to make a mistake in training, or you never want to have a bad training cycle. That's never the goal. But if it does happen, use it to your advantage in some way. And now you're going to use that to your advantage. So I never regret looking back and making a mistake, or looking back when I didn't quite know something, because I'm always able to become a better lifter because of that, or be able to be a better coach because of that. And it sounds like that's what you did there. And I think that's one of the coolest things. It's never a goal to have a bad training cycle or to make a mistake, but inevitably you will. Just make sure you use it the right way. Just don't make it again. You make it 2 or 3 times, now you're not learning. Yeah. But if you make it once, you actually see that. And a lot of times when we see things, since everybody's so into utilizing research these days, it's one thing to see it in research. It's one thing to say, hey, I don't have to train to failure every set to make progress. But it's another thing to actually implement it. And people, sometimes it doesn't hit home with people until people actually run intro cycles. People actually train to a 6, 7, 8 RPE instead of failure and make progress. And then the light bulb goes off and they say, all right, this is how I can do that. It makes them a better lifter. It makes them a better coach.
Yeah, and just to touch back on my story a little bit, if I could have redone it, I would have done that intro week and just cut that intensity block shorter. I probably would have gotten a lot more out of just doing that.
Sure, I agree with that. I most certainly think that you would. Remember, and this is a good point too, intensity blocks are typically going to be shorter than volume blocks, because in intensity blocks, you're starting at a higher intensity, but also a higher RPE per set, where you're closer to failure on each set and you're having less sets. Where in volume blocks, you're starting with a much lower RPE. So you have less room to increase load in intensity blocks. And you're also getting more of a neuromuscular adaptation. Let's say, a couple weeks out from a meet, instead of doing really any volume, you might be doing a double on squat at a 9 RPE or a single on deadlift at a 9.5 RPE. So you're going to get neuromuscular adaptations if you're doing that, but it's only going to last for so long. You're not going to be able to do that every single week and continue to progress. So if you extend that past 4 or 5 weeks, you might start to see a little bit of a plateau, if you will, there going into the competition. So I agree with you. If you would have intro and then run a little bit of a shorter block, you would have kind of peaked more at the right time. But it's a science, but it's not an exact science trying to peak at a right time. I think we've all gone through a cycle where, we've peaked and we've had a great training session, but we say, man, I wonder if this is a week too early. The competition's in 2 weeks, and I want to make sure I'm peaking on that day, and that's always the game.
Yeah. All right, Mike. So I think the best way to kind of explain proper training, programming, and to teach people how to use it is to give someone kind of like an example. So if you don't mind, if we can quickly and kind of rough draftly create a 1 4-week block of DUP type programming using myself. So I want you to ask me all the questions you would need to create a program. And my rationale behind this is just so our listeners can understand what a coach goes through in order to create a program and what goes into the design. Sure, let's do it, man. So, Anthony, I'll ask you some questions here, as you said, as I would ask anybody. So, Mr. Bevilacqua, sir, how long have you been engaged in resistance training? I've been training for a long time. I started when I was 14. I'm 29 now. I'm gonna be 30 this year. Ugh. Hey, I'm 31, man. So you've got your whole life in front of you there, as far as I'm concerned. That makes each of us approximately 35 years younger than Eric Helms. So, okay, so you've been training for 14 years, and specifically, what are you training for? I'm training for a meet. So basically, my goal is for Raw Nationals next year, I would like to qualify and go to the Arnold. So in order to do that, I need a 450 Wilks. So I'd have to add 100 pounds to my total. So that's in 42 weeks, something like that. So my next quote-unquote meet is going to be kind of like a tester meet. That's going to be in 27 weeks. But for the short-term goal, in the next 12 weeks, I'm going to do a mock meet at my home gym here. Okay, so 12 weeks, yes. And then you have your next official meet in 27 weeks from now. Correct. Okay, so we have those details. And what would you say over the past 6 months or so, what has been your average frequency on all three main lifts, squat, bench press, and deadlift? And if you can give me a gauge about how many sets per week you believe you're doing with that frequency. All right, so I'm basically doing anywhere between 3 and 4 sets for each lift, just to keep everything kind of simple. My frequency is 3 times a week for each lift. 3 to 4 sets per session, or 3 to 4 sets per week? No, per session. I'm sorry. Okay, no problem. Okay, so 3 times a week frequency. And would you say you're training mostly in a hypertrophy type of rep range, a strength type of rep range, or using all repetitions across the spectrum? All across the spectrum. I said, for my last meet, I did 864, and then I transitioned to 531. Okay, great. So with that, I now have a pretty decent profile on you. I've established that we have some time until your next official competition. We kind of know how much we need to increase your total, you said, by 100 pounds. And the one thing that we'll get here before I would officially write this block here was your estimated 1RMs. But here's what I'll take into account at this point, just for the listeners. So obviously from this, Anthony's an experienced lifter, right? He knows what he's doing. Well, when we think. We will hope. I guess we'll find out once he starts the training block. Yeah.
So that's I'm sure everybody out there that coaches has done something like this, where they'll get this information from somebody, and then I always get videos from somebody on their technique before we get started, and I'll get their videos, and then all of a sudden you can tell in their video immediately that they are not anywhere near what they said they were on paper. Right? So I established from this that you're an experienced lifter. You already have a fairly decent volume that you do, doing 3 to 4 sets per day. And so this is averaging probably about 10 sets per week on each exercise and a frequency of 3 times a week. So already you have very good training, which means you're consistent with what the meta-analytics say is to have a frequency of around 3 times per week, to do 10 or more sets per week. And you train across the spectrum, which means that you probably have good muscle growth along with strength, telling from your Raw Nationals experience. So I do know for you that when we go into a training block, you're probably not going to gain strength if we're starting with some really, really high volume, in the 15, 12, 10 range. We're going to be able to accumulate a lot of volume, but in terms of strength progress, you're probably already pretty neuromuscularly efficient, so that's not going to do it for you in terms of strength. So if I want to do something like 15 reps for you, then I would probably also need to do some lower repetitions in that block for you to maintain your strength, because you are very productive already. So the last thing I'll get from you here is, what would you say your estimated 1RMs are on each lift?
Well, I'll tell you what I hit at my last meet. I went 8 for 9 at my last meet, and I missed my last bench. I think it was too high of a jump, whatever, neither here nor there. What I hit at my last meet, I did a 540 squat in competition. Okay. I did a 347 bench, and my deadlift, I did 556.
Okay. So now typically when I'm developing a program for somebody, I'll have them write to me, as we just did, their 1RMs. However, we won't get started until they actually test their 1RMs or near 1RMs and send me videos. So because I obviously want to see them and then work on technique and so forth. But if somebody says, hey, obviously you can squat 540, you did it in a meet. But if somebody says, hey, I can squat 540, but then they send me videos and it's only 510, that changes things a bit. So Anthony, since we don't have any videos here, can you tell me what RPE these were each at for you at the competition?
Pete, why don't you answer that one? So basically, I work out with my co-host here, and he tells me my RPE because I'm not a good gauger in it. So what would you say? Go ahead.
I would say they were all fairly close to a 9.5.
Okay. So if they're all close to 9.5, so that means, let's say maybe we have 2.5 kilos on each lift. Excitability is a little bit more in a competition. So if we take these at your actual maxes, the first thing I want to get across to all the listeners is immediately, no matter the lifter, I take 5 kilos, 10 pounds off their max to start. So I would start when I'm programming your percentages using 530, 335, and 545. The reason that I'm going to do that is really twofold. One, it sets us up for success in that if we're going to program volume, we can't really, I'm not worried about starting too light. If something is too light, we can increase. That's not a problem. But if we start too heavy and our RPEs are higher than they should be, or we're missing repetitions in the first week, that's really going to be a problem. It's hard to, it's kind of almost a wasted week right off the bat. So I'm not worried about starting too light. We can do that. But also, even if those maxes are accurate, remember, if you're using a percentage-based program, you're not taking into account daily fluctuations. If somebody got a little bit of sleep the night before, somebody was in school and had an exam, somebody had to work a long shift. So if we start with 5 kilos, 10 pounds lower than somebody's actual max, we always set ourselves up for success. So I think that's a really good point to talk about. And it's kind of like doing an intro week. It's being disciplined. The easy thing to do is to go start with the actual max. The hard thing to do is to take 5 kilos off. So, okay, now we have all of our numbers here that we need. So for this, Anthony's an experienced lifter based upon the feedback. He's already very strong. So we have a mock meet that's going to be in 12 weeks, and then we have a competition in 27 weeks. I want to get him ready for the mock meet, but I don't want to absolutely peak him. So I'm not going to break out all of my peaking strategies. I want to save those for the real competition in 27 weeks. So I want to get him stronger. I want to put some weight on the bar, but I want him to go into that mock meet where we haven't taken all of our peaking strategies and used them because I want those peaking strategies to take their effect 27 weeks from now. So if we have 12 weeks, what I would probably do here is I'd probably run 3 training blocks. I probably run one volume block where we have, let's say, an 8-6-4 undulation pattern to start. So let's take this and let's say we have week 1. Now in week 1, and I'm going to type this out on my computer here just to make sure that I am putting this into play. You know what I can do here if you want, while we're developing this, I can put it in a spreadsheet, and as we come up with this, I can actually send it to you guys. I don't know if you want to post it anywhere or anybody wants to take a look.
I could put it in the show notes, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, I can definitely put it in a spreadsheet here so you guys have it. And again, this isn't, nobody take this as one size fits all, but just for this individual, here's how I would go about making this program.
See, that's why I like you, Mike. You're a nice guy. You're always thinking.
I'm a nice guy. I don't hear. You should talk to Helms about that. He doesn't call me nice. He says I'm a mean guy. I don't understand. I appreciate it, man. That's why we're here. We do these podcasts. It's free content for people. It's to help people. So might as well take advantage of it. So all right. So week 1, I would start with let's take squat. I would start with an 8-6-4 undulation pattern for Anthony. So what I would do is we're taking 5 kilos, 10 pounds off his max at 530. So I would start him. Let's just call this an intro week rather than week 1. And so in this intro, I'd probably start him. Let's say 3 sets of 8 at maybe 65% of his 1RM, and then that's on Monday. And then on Wednesday, I'd have him squat again, and I'd do 3 sets of 6 at 70% of his 1RM. And then on Friday, I'd have him do 3 sets of 4 at 80%. And then I'd have him do, after that, I'd have him do 1 set of 2 at 82.5%. And the reason I'm putting that second set in there is it's still going to be very easy. 2 reps at 82.5% should be around a 5 RPE for him. But he's already a pretty strong guy, so I don't want him to get too far away from doing any sort of intensity. But that's going to be a very easy intro week. That is the squat for that week. For bench, for the purposes of this, so we don't take up too much time doing everything, think of bench is going to be programmed in a very similar fashion to squat. If squat is on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, think of bench being programmed on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And then we can go back and work in deadlift after this. But let's focus on the squat for now. After that, we're going to go into week 1. So remember, let's go day by day so we can make sure we understand how this is going. In the intro week, we had 3 sets of 8 at 65% on Monday. So now we want to increase this. We're doing volume. So to get more volume, we're going to do, let's say, 4 sets of 8 at 70%. So if you recall back when we talked about our integrated macro cycle earlier, we were recommending in the early stages of a volume block that we would have our RPEs that would be around 5, 6, 7. Well, if I gave most people 70% on a squat and I said I want you to do 1 repetition or 1 set for as many repetitions as you can, I'd envision most people would get somewhere between 12 and 15 repetitions. So if I give Anthony 4 sets of 8 at 70%, let's say he can do 13 repetitions at 70%. If he does his first set of 8, he would record an RPE of 5. That means he has 5 more repetitions left, 5 repetitions in reserve. Now, he has 4 total sets. So over the next 3 sets, his RPE might go up to, let's say, 7. So that would keep his RPE between 5 and 7. So 4 sets of 8 at 70% on that Monday. Now, let's go to Wednesday. We have 5 sets of 6 at 75%. So remember, now we're using our daily undulating programming. The intensity is going up, and the repetitions are going down from 8 to 6, and the intensity is going up from 70 to 75. This should still keep him in that RPE range around 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 at the most, and we're staying with our strategy here. And now we're going to go to Friday, and let's give Anthony, since he's an experienced lifter, I'm going to do 2 things here. I'm going to give him 4 sets of 4 at 80%, but I'm also going to give him 2 sets of 2 at 85%. So in that case, I still want to keep him, since we have an undulating programming strategy, I still want to keep in some intensity to 85% because he is an experienced lifter, so I don't want to get him too far away from that, but we've already accumulated a lot of volume. So I want to go back through this week for a second, and I want to illustrate why we're keeping the RPEs low here in this volume block. If we do 4 sets of 8 at 70%, well, we said we were going to keep the RPE at around 7 probably on the last set. So if, in contrast, I would ask, let's just take Pete, since you're there as well. if I were to give Pete a program and I said, hey, Pete, I want you to do 4 sets at 70%, but instead of doing 8 reps, I just want you to do as many reps as you can on each set. You might get, let's say, 15 on the first, you might get 11 on the second, you might get 8 on the third, and you might get 5 on the fourth. Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. If we did that in this program, your program for 5 sets of 6 at 75% on Wednesday, just 2 days later, and you did all those sets to failure on Monday, do you think you'd be able to effectively do that training on Wednesday?
No, I would still be beat up, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it'd be game over.
Come on, man, be honest. My legs will snap off. Come on, use one of your...
I would probably have trouble even getting under the bar.
There we go.
Yeah, it'd be a pretty rough time there. So that's what I was referring to earlier a while back when we were talking about disseminating volume throughout a week. So I hope that helps to illustrate why it's not necessarily a good idea to train to failure all the time, at least, because if you do that, you're going to cause more damage and more fatigue, and indirectly, if you do that, you're going to decrease the frequency you can do, which is indirectly going to decrease the volume that you can do. Mm-hmm. So even though out of the 3 main variables, volume, frequency, and intensity, volume is the one that's most closely associated with muscle growth, and volume is maybe the most important, if you will. That's not kind of a recommendation to do as much volume as you possibly can every time you train. That makes no sense. If you do that and then you can't recover and you can't train again more frequently, well, and you go all those sets to failure, you won't only train once a week. So while you did more volume in a day, if you do that, you actually do less volume in a week, less volume in a mesocycle, less volume in a macrocycle. So that's what I mean when I say disseminating volume appropriately, and that's why I think it's important to manage RPE, especially when you have a lot of sets. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I hope that hits home with everybody out there. To be honest, that might be the most important concept that we talk about here today, is how to disseminate volume throughout the week to make sure you can achieve the 2 to 3 time a week frequency, and you can achieve the amount of total sets and volume that you need to throughout the week, rather than packing it all into one day, which is going to be too fatiguing and too damaging. So correct. We have this week, we have this 8-6 undulation, and then we're doing some doubles at 85% at the end of the week. Now let's go to week 2. So in week 2, from week 1 to 2, the one thing we haven't talked about yet is how to progress load from week to week. There's a few ways to do this. One is to just simply add an arbitrary amount of weight, let's say 5 or 10 pounds. And that has, I like that in a lot of ways. It has obvious drawbacks, which is, well, if you just tell somebody to increase 5 pounds and they don't make the adaptation and they miss repetitions, that was just an arbitrary standard. Another one is to gauge RPE. And let's say I gauge RPE during week 1, and I have the RPEs are very low, let's say 5, then I can take a larger increase, maybe 10 pounds. If the RPEs are higher, maybe 8, then I might only increase 5 pounds. So those are a couple ways to do that. I kind of like to use in volume blocks, I like to use the arbitrary amount of weight increase, usually 5 pounds, unless the RPEs are high. If the RPEs are low, I don't really like to increase too much more because it's predicated on getting more volume. And if we increase too much too soon, I'm not interested in progressing too much too soon or doing more volume than we need to by increasing load too much too soon. So let's say we just take an increase 5 pounds, and now we have 4 sets of 8 at week 1 plus 5. And then we have on Monday, then on Wednesday, we have 5 sets of 6 at week 1 plus 5. And then on Friday, remember, we had 4x4 at 80% and 2x2 at 85% the previous week. So now what I'd like to do is do 5x4 at 80%. And then I'd like to go ahead, at 80% plus 5 pounds. So at week 1 plus 5 pounds. And now I'd like to stay with that 85%. And I would like to do 2x2, but I'd like to add a plus, and that means a plus set or as many reps as possible, an AMRAP set, now that we've made a little bit of an adaptation here, and do that at 85%. And there's going to be a few advantages to this here. The reason I didn't put that in the intro week is obviously because it's intro, and I didn't put it in week 1 yet because Anthony was coming off of a competition, so I didn't see a need coming off of the competition to really try to beat him up too much too soon. I wanted him to make the adaptation rather than debilitating himself in the first week. So that plus set only comes on the very, very last set of that day, and that is freedom for him to do as many reps as possible, if you will. But I don't want him to fail, so I usually advocate a 9 or 9.5 RPE. This is not necessary by any means, but I do like to use it maybe, let's say, every other week, maybe once a training block, or just kind of training by feel. If your RPEs are low and you think you're going to have a good plus set and you might hit a PR or rep PR that day, go ahead and do it. But I like to keep it on the last day of the week in this Monday, Wednesday, Friday setup. The reason being, it's the set that's going to take you closest to failure and be the most fatiguing. So you have all Saturday and Sunday to recover, whereas if you put it on Monday, on the 4x8 day, you're going to set to failure and you might not recover for Wednesday. Also, if you do it on the high rep day, you might be getting something like 15 reps, which is out of the scope of what the training block is focused on. So I like to keep it on the end of the week. The other advantage of this is it allows us to also alter our load progression for the following week if we so choose. So if there's 2 sets of 2 at the plus, and at 85%, and Anthony goes ahead and gets 10 repetitions on that, we now know that's not 85% anymore. We know that he's gotten stronger. So it's a way to do kind of an intra-mesocycle, an intra-block test, if you will, to kind of gauge strength progress and how he's handling all of the volume. So we can go ahead and do that. And we do that in week 2, and then we can progress to week 3. In week 3, what I would probably do and then I would go to week 4. And remember, we were doing an 8-6-4 undulation. So in week 4 now, I would probably make this the last week of this block. And the reason being, rather than seeing how it's going and continuing, although we could, is because we have a fixed timeline here to the mock meet. So since we have a fixed timeline, we're a little bit more confined of how long we can extend the training block. So now in week 4, we were going on an 8-6-4 undulation. What I would now do is I would start to decrease the repetitions and the volume to start to prepare for a taper and maybe some sort of rep testing to see where we are after this block as we then start to transition into some intensity. So after this, we had 4 sets of 8 in week 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to go to 3 sets of 7. And because I'm going down from 8s to 7s, instead of adding 5 pounds, I'm going to add 10 pounds, assuming his RPEs are all in line, which I imagine they would be. And that's another good thing. If I'm saying I'm going to add 5 pounds each week here, I'm doing that predicated that the RPEs are staying in my range of 5 to 7 that I allocated for this block. If the RPEs start to go to 8 to 9, then I might keep the load the same for that following week. But also get feedback on why. Maybe the RPEs are higher because the individual is just not making the adaptation, but maybe they're low 2 out of 3 days of the week, and then one day they're high, and the lifter will just tell you, well, I just didn't sleep well the night before. Something easy that's accounting for that. So in week 4 again, on that Monday, instead of going 4x8, we're going to go 3x7, and we're going to increase 10 pounds instead of 5 because we dropped a rep. Then on Wednesday, instead of doing 5x6, we're going to go ahead and do 4x5, so decrease the volume of the sets by taking the sets from 5 to 4, and then we're going to decrease the reps going from 6 to 5. So again, we're going to add 10 pounds here. And then finally on Friday, remember we were doing 4s and then we were doing doubles. So now I'm going to take this down to 3 sets of 3, and then I'm going to take it down to 2 sets of 1 plus. In the final week of the block, if we get a plus set, that might give us some idea of where we are going into kind of a rep testing week on the following week. And we've increased 10 pounds on each of those because we've taken 1 repetition down. So that's how I set up the 4-week block. And then when I would go to this next week, this 5th week, I would do probably some sort of 2 or 3 RM testing. I wouldn't take a 1 RM test because the block isn't designed for that. It was more of a volume block. So I might go, I would train twice this week. So leading up to the max on let's say Friday, if you will. So 3 times total, but 2 times in the taper. The components of our taper are to keep frequency the same. So again, we train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, keep intensity about the same, but decrease volume, let's say between 40 and 80% or so, pretty significantly. So what I would do is on Monday, the previous Monday, we were training 3 sets of 7. So on this Monday, for the taper, I would train 3 sets of 3 and add 5 pounds to what I was doing on the 3 sets of 7. So if at the 3 sets of 7, my RPEs were 6, meaning 4 repetitions in reserve, and now I've added 5 pounds and I'm only doing 3s, my RPEs are going to be very low. But what I did was I increased the absolute intensity, the load on the bar, by 5 pounds, but I kept the volume very, very low by only going 3x3. Then on Wednesday, and the previous week we were doing 4 sets of 5, I would add 5 pounds to that, but I would do 3 sets of 1. So now the intensity still went up. I'm keeping with the components of a taper. And then on Friday, I would take maybe 2 reps at a 9 to a 9.5 RPE. And we should be able to then estimate a new 1RM based upon that, and then go into our intro for the next block, which would start to taper down the volume and increase the intensity as we went closer to the competition. So that would be the first block I would run. I don't know if there are any questions on that, and I don't know if everybody could follow that. I tried to do it pretty methodically and logically and refer back so everybody could follow. So I hope that made sense, guys.
Yeah, no, it did, and it perfect because you did that well. Obviously, you know what you're doing. So, but it leads me into my next question here. So, what if we'll use me as an example again? So, I want to improve my deadlift. I want to bring up my 1 rep max in the deadlift.
Yes.
In addition to everything else, but I really want to bring up my deadlift because I feel like that's one lift that's a little bit behind for me. So, what has to go into my training program in order to do that? So, let's say for my next meet, the mock meet, which is 12 weeks away, I want to add as much as I can to my deadlift total. So would I be, how would someone, I mean, this could go for anything, bench, squat, either one. Do you usually add more volume for that one lift that you want to bring up? How can I bring up my deadlift within the next 12 weeks then?
Sure. So if you have, and that's a pretty quick time frame. So if somebody has a quick time frame that they want to bring a certain lift up, well, we would certainly want to bring a focus on the lift. But the easiest way to do that is to just simply increase the intensity on that lift. So in the long term, you're going to need volume to build a lift because you're not going to be able to just train at high intensity and have that last forever. But in the fairly short term, you can get very, very good neuromuscular adaptations from working up, let's say, heavy singles a few times a week on a lift. To be able to do that. So for the deadlift especially, single repetitions on the deadlift, and I know you guys had Matt Gary on, is how I like to. I don't know if I exclusively train deadlift of single repetitions, certainly not for bodybuilders, but for the most part, I would train deadlifts with single repetitions. The reason being is on the first rep of a deadlift, it starts from the floor. So meaning it starts with the concentric portion. So you don't get the benefit of the stretch reflex or the stretch shortening cycle. But on the second repetition, if you touch and go, or even if you just set the bar down for less than 4 seconds, and then you do the next repetition, you're getting the benefit of the stretch reflex. So that doesn't necessarily translate to a 1RM as well as doing single repetitions. So on a deadlift, what I would probably do is I would see where your frequency is in the reps that you've been doing, and you answered that for me already. But since you are doing multiple repetitions on the deadlift, I would probably have you deadlift twice a week at first, even though you were doing it 2 times a week, and do 1 day singles around, let's say, 80 to 85%. And then on the second day, I would have you work up to a heavy single between a 9 and a 9.5 RPE, kind of like a conservative max. And I would do that for a few weeks and then maybe taper. And then leading into the meet, if your goal was really focused on the deadlift, I would probably have you work up early in the week to a little bit more of a conservative max, 8.5 to 9 RPE. And then toward the end of the week, a 9.5 to 10 RPE, or I should say a 9 to 9.5 RPE, maybe conservative max on the deadlift. So you're working up multiple times heavy there to get that neuromuscular adaptation going into the competition. But that's for the short term. If we were just focusing on the 27 weeks competition and cut out the 12 weeks, I would recommend volume for quite a while on the deadlift, and then I would work up into that strategy as a peaking strategy later on. But if we were starting to peak right away for a short term, then obviously we would implement the peaking strategy to kind of peak for that meet. But I do want to say that's kind of an artificial peak, since you're not building muscle first and you're not taking advantage of that additional cross-sectional area. Then that neuromuscular benefit won't be there forever. So the longer term strategy is better, but to peak in the short term, we did a study here at FAU where we had individuals max on the squat every single day for 37 consecutive days. Actually, we did 36 maxes in 37 days. So in the short term, the best way to get something strong is just to simply max on it every single day. However, I'm certainly not recommending anybody do that because of the injury risk that can occur if somebody's not adapted to it. But that's not a long-term. I can't say it's a long-term strategy, if you will. I would rather somebody build through volume first and then go to that. So the 12-week strategy would be a little different than the 27-week strategy. But essentially, I would just start the peaking strategy earlier for the 12 weeks.
That makes sense. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. I mean, we could talk for hours on this, and we would definitely have to have you come back for a follow-up here because I know we're going to get a ton of questions based on this, but I think we explained it well because I wanted to really touch on exactly because there's a lot of myths out there with DUP, and I think we really crushed them. And putting together that 4-week block for training for me is going to help a lot of people because it'll make it a lot clearer in what goes on in just creating a program. It's not like, oh, okay, I just have to train lifts 3 times a week and wing it and go from there.
Well, I'm happy to come on, man, and do that. Like we said, the 2 words we mentioned at the outset, integration of periodization models and then understanding things conceptual. But I really appreciate it, guys. We've been friends for a little while now, Anthony, so I appreciate the invitation. And Pete, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. Happy to come back anytime. I'll try to be better about scheduling this next time. And hope to see you guys down at the Muscle Lab one.
Yeah, man, definitely. So where can our listeners find out more about you if they're interested in have any questions for you or whatever? I'll add you to our New York Muscle Radio group on Facebook. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, you could definitely ask Mike in there. But where can anyone find you and follow you and what you're up to? Because you're always doing something that's on the forefront of strength.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not the biggest social media guy, but I do have a personal Facebook page, and I don't post up on there a ton, but I do post up when our lab has a new paper or something of the sort. If not, it's usually about Metallica or ginger ale, which is amazing. Other than that, you can find me. I have a YouTube channel. Every once in a while, I'll post a training video up there. If you're interested in research, there's a website called ResearchGate where we post our papers. But there is something called the Shredded by Science Academy, which Eric Helms and I did a bunch of content for. 2 wonderful guys, Luke Johnson and Lawrence Judd, run that out of the UK. I teach a whole course on training and coaching for powerlifting in there. That is for purchase, so I don't mean to try to sell you anything, but if you are interested in my ideas, you can go on there and get into the Shredded by Science Academy and look into that. Other than that, man, I'm not out there too much on social media, but I'm happy if you find me there. If you find my email, you can email me at mzourdos, that's MZOURDOS at Comcast.net. I do take clients there and coach strength athletes, and you can answer questions if I can, man. So I appreciate the exposure today. I appreciate the conversation, and glad these topics are getting out there, man.
All right, guys, Pete and Anthony with Dr. Mike Zourdos, New York Muscle Radio, and we're out.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.